Author of Hidden History, Crimes and Cover-Ups in American Politics, 1776 to 1963, and Survival of the Richest, Donald Jeffries separates the real from the unreal. Fact from fiction. Reverse engineering our manufactured reality. And now, from just outside the swamp-infested Washington, D.C., this is I Protest with Donald Jeffries.
And welcome to I Protest. This is Donald Jeffries, coming to you from just outside the swamp-infested Washington, D.C., as the guy says, every Friday, as we do, from 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern. I have a return guest coming, Mary Maxwell, who's just a delight. I have a soft spot in my heart for her. She's going to talk about Hawaii, and she's running for some kind of public office, too. So she's going to be here. I'm waiting on her. She's having trouble with the links. In the meantime, I can see you guys, boy, have been the chat room is already cooking over on YouTube. Deborah Wheeler says to give a hug to Riley. I will try my best, but Elizabeth Peter says Riley's my dog. Yes, I think everybody knows Riley's my dog. Our mascot. Hugs to Riley. I'll try. Said she's got it looks like Mary's coming. She's very clingy and aloof both. Mary Maxwell, is that you?
It is.
Well, where's your video? I want to see you.
Okay. I want to be seen. You're in the show, it says.
Yeah, you're in the show. We can hear you. You just have to turn your audio, turn your video on.
Right next to the camera.
Yeah, you don't have. So what you need to do is go down it should be like they should have a cam or camera and just
start cam.
Start cam.
Yeah. Ding.
And there she is. How have you been?
I'm fine. You see, I'm sitting near a blue protector.
Okay, well, I got and let me see here. Okay, on January 2nd, 2024, the Maui Council allowed anyone to give testimony for 3 minutes on the issue of the proposed dump site for the debris from the fire that destroyed the town of Lahaina last August. Mary Maxwell wants to read for us the testimony she gave that day. As far as she is aware, she is the only testifier who mentioned direct as the culprit. Mary, go ahead and read.
Before I read it, everybody understands what we're talking about, right? At August 8th of this year, there was a devastating fire on one of the islands known as Maui, and the town of Lahaina, which is within Maui, was particularly wiped out. And I went over there to look at it, but at that time, it was all fenced off. You couldn't see anything, but the day after I left, they made it available to inspect. However, on that day, you had to have, what do you call that, PPE, you have to wear stuff against, contamination, so I didn't have that. Anyway, all right, this is my statement. It has to last exactly 3 minutes. To the Maui Council and Mayor Bisson, I am a resident of Concord, the capital city of New Hampshire. I am an admirer of Hawaii and have been very worried since the fire. I visited Maui in late November. Today, January 2nd, I have spent all day listening to the testimony at your council meeting via YouTube. What can I offer that has any merit? I have read the relevant law. There have been many court cases involving Environmental Protection Agency and eminent domain, as in the Fifth Amendment. It appears that after EPA does a cleanup, that's what they're going to do with this huge amount of debris, it can lay claim to the land. There's mention of a land grab in a recent book called Burn Back Better. The authors quote Governor Green saying, just days after the fire, I'm already thinking of ways for the state to acquire that land. But I'm not here to testify about the law of eminent domain. Rather, I happened to see at the website of EPA.gov that when they plan to do a cleanup of toxic waste, they first must make a finding as to fault. Who caused the site to be contaminated? And there we have it, the real question before all Americans today. Who done it? It is my guess that everyone who has looked at the photos of the fire knows full well that the fire was caused by some form of directed energy weapons. Unfortunately, any person holding an official position is unlikely to make such a statement. I myself do hereby state that I believe there is no other possible explanation of the fact that cars got melted while trees close by did not burn. And who am I to say so? I am a person with 2 eyes, 2 ears, and a working cerebrum. I am also a full-time researcher since 2005, whose subject matter is often grisly. I do not know the jurisprudence on this matter, that is, not just past court cases, but any interpretation of how to do this thing. But I will endeavor to search, and if EPA really does have to determine blame legally and has not done so, the cleanup may have to be postponed. And if it has pinned the blame on nature, I will oppose it. We must blame someone who owns the means of causing a DEW fire. We seem to be living in a century where lying is the norm. I am 76 years old. Back in the 20th century, there was no such across-the-board acceptance of lying. In fact, it was quite the sin. I hate lies. I swear under penalty of perjury that I believe the August 23rd, Maui fire was done by Jews deliberately and cruelly. There is no possible way to chalk the melted cars up to a natural fire. Signed, blah, blah. So that's my little 3 minutes.
Well, wonderful. So tell us, because it's the last time, you're interested in a lot of things. I guess we haven't talked to you since the Maui fire. So what aroused your interest about this? I assume this is what you're researching now.
Well, my first thought was, Mary, don't touch it. I mean, I've done, a few things like the Boston Marathon and some things in Australia. And why do I do it? Because there's no point. At the end of it, you can't get the courts to do their job. You can't make anything happen. But I'm afraid that one really got to me, in that if it had been a foreign element dropping these weapons, everybody would be saying, who are we going to war with? Well, I'm asking, who are we going to war with? Who would do such a thing? And then there was, I'll just mention a couple of books relevant here. First, this is excellent. These 2 women who lived there, they're trying to say, well, they sort of take 2 parts. One says DEW and the other doesn't. And they run through the whole story, which I hate to go into it, but I'll give a couple of highlights. Speaking of Sandy Hook, the man who is the police chief there for Maui, and he's also the coroner.
Yeah, how does that work? How does that work? I don't think I've ever heard of that before.
And he was the police chief at the Las Vegas shooting, if you know what I mean.
Oh.
But that's not the main point. That's one of those side things that gets people going, of course. But she thinks that the main event, and I don't see how this can come to court, but I want to have anybody that's listening, please chip in on any ideas of how we can bring this to punishment, bring it to justice. Speaking of that, there's a T-shirt that goes with this. I think it costs about $28, and it's really heavy duty. It's good stuff. So on the front it says Maui Massacre, which certainly is one of those. And I think it's a massacre, folks. Somebody massacred our Hawaiians, and they'll do it to your town next week. Okay, so on the back you get to see. I'll hold it up a bit. Okay, there are 3 pictures here. What am I doing? One of them seems to say no water. You see the text. During the whole event, in fact, starting many hours before the event, all water was turned off. That meant when the firemen went to the hydrants, no water. And the one in the middle means no sirens. So Maui has a lot of sirens. And when I was there, I didn't hear sirens, but I got robocalls telling me this and that. And the other one says no exit. So that little picture over on the left or the right, I don't work well.
But before I want to let the Rockman chat know, I actually can see you today. So good to see you, Rhonda Tate, Patrick S., and Max B. So you guys can go in there. And of course, we're monitoring the YouTube chat as well. So if you have questions or comments for Mary, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes, I want to hear from everybody. This is a community effort here. I'm only a little bit ahead of the game because I bought the relevant books. Let me just tell you one thing I discovered within the last hour. When the people stepped forward yesterday, it was Monday. No, Monday was New Year's Day. It was Tuesday. They had this testimony thing. And one of the first things they cried about, they were really crying, was that when you move the debris, you will be moving the ashes of our loved ones. Right? And so they have already said they found 97 deceased. And I'm pretty sure that the officials, said we found it by DNA, because you were asked to go in and give a little bit from your hand or whatever, and give your DNA and we'll find your relatives. There is no such thing as getting DNA from ash. I looked it up in reliable places. It can't happen. You can get it after death from a tooth or from bone, but such is the heat in crematoriums, which are not connected to this far hotter directed energy, it doesn't end up with the teeth being separate. It's all in the ashes, and you cannot determine anything about DNA from that. So why did I go off on that track? I forget. Okay, so back to the story of, I'll just mention a couple of the books. So Burn Back Better is excellent. This one I don't particularly recommend you buy because it's already gone slightly out of date. The man, he's a good fellow. Christopher Parson lives there. And he said, he named his book DEW, but he sort of made it a little bit of a joke, like he had to make it a bit of a joke. That was his only hope of getting that thing into print at that moment. He's telling you, hey, it's DEW, okay, guys? Now, another book that then I ran for, but it was printed in 2016. And I absolutely demand that every American read this book, Under an Ionized Sky. How this girl, Ilana Freeland, is so clever. She's so thorough in her research. And she has pulled it all together about HAARP and about radiation that we're receiving from 5G and all these things. And she wrote that like 6 or 7 years ago. But it helps you get through the new thing. But the most new one on this subject is called War at the Speed of Light by Mr. Belmonte. And he's in the industry. He's not there to say, we don't want any directed weapons. He's here to say, let's make sure we get really good ones. And in the blurb of the book, it says, in potential adversaries such as China and Russia do these things. So in response, the U.S. Department of Defense established the 2018 National Security Strategy emphasizing directed energy weapons. I'm just only reading that so nobody can afford to hang up and say, oh, yeah, I heard about that. That's not true. I mean, directed energy is like major. Okay. I am going to bring out two because I might not remember to do it later. There's this girl named Mary Efrosini Gregory, and I've known her for years, well, since 2012, as the girl who wrote this little story, a remarkable story. She worked in 9/11, in Building 6. That's the main point. The main point.
That's where all the gold was.
I see. Well, I don't think she got away with the gold, but her name is last name is Gregory. The book is called, this one is called Microwave Experiment, followed by Microwave War. If you're only going to buy one, I guess you should buy Microwave War. And all by herself. She retired in 2006 from the customs office, which was in the World Trade Center. And she's a classics scholar. She's got several books about Cicero or Aristophanes or somebody. And she was determined to show how her house in Regal Park, you familiar with Queens at all?
My wife comes from Queens, so okay. Just that little, wasn't she was a kid, but I've done
your wife that on Queens Boulevard, right near the Rite Aid, Rite Aid pharmacy, are these buildings, and apparently when a plane is coming into JFK, it can hit people in their buildings. Now, you maybe have had a show at some time about TI, targeted individuals. I know Miss Kent.
I not really, but I've heard from a lot of them. We kind of danced around that, but yeah, I hear from lots of people that are targeted. Yes,
I have known two, and I saw one in action. I saw her get targeted, and the other girl didn't. I never saw it, but when she came to my house to stay overnight, she put on a very elaborate sort of bed costume, and she says, "I'm sorry, but probably they don't do it at your house, but I'm used to doing this at night." She dresses up to prevent these hits, and there are many such victims. And I have heard sometimes that they're randomly chosen. They just want to experiment on people. But on the other hand, the two people I know were definitely picked because they, the sort of.
Well, let's talk as far as Hawaii. And my audience knows we've done a little bit about it on our show, but I'm certainly there's so much oddity there. And somebody already mentioned about the blue color where it couldn't hit the blue color. I mean, there's all kinds of strange stuff there, high strangeness. We heard rumors that as you mentioned, the police chief, who was also connected to the strange Las Vegas shooting, about which lots of questions are made there as well, pops up in Hawaii. That's odd enough. And then he's also the coroner. I don't think I've ever, you go back to the Andy Griffith show where he was the justice of peace and everything else, but in real life, I've never heard of somebody. I mean, what is the connection between, don't you have to have a medical license? So why would you be the chief of police? And do you understand why? Does anybody question that at all?
You don't have to have a medical license, because the book I wrote in Australia called Inquest, a coroner, the judge was the judge of the coronial court, and he wouldn't have even pretended to know medical things. He was taking in the evidence of where was the body found, or how thick was the glass of the window that you couldn't shoot through, anything relevant there. But I suppose in Andy Griffith's day, and this will show how naive we all have been, though maybe our naivete was justified. Maybe the Andy Griffith type was a real type of good American, and there you wouldn't have to worry if he was both coroner and police chief, because
no, you're right.
He wouldn't be cheating.
How could you not trust him? I wish there was a Mayberry. I would move there in a second. Let me tell you. Okay.
Yes. And most of the reason we don't have a Mayberry today, I think, is that we are constantly being told that we don't have one, even though perhaps we do. But
yeah.
The main gig is to get you stirred up and worried that your neighbor's going to kill you, or that there's no hope anymore. And I can tell you, my experience is there's no hope in court. You can get yourself into court on the most valid premises, and the judge will just say, duh. They do not help you. It's cruel. It's terrible. And that, too, is part of the game of letting you know things are bad and they're going to get worse.
Yeah.
Now, I see the letter J. Does that mean I should do something?
No, that's just Jacob that said, he's the second person that said Elena Freeland's books are great. Are you familiar with Elena Freeland? Yeah. Second person is one of those ones you held up by Elena?
Let me go back to the thing.
Yes, two different people said Elena Freeland.
Mary Gregory worked all by herself. She doesn't even pretend to be a scientist, but she kept studying what was happening in the skies over her house in Rego Park, Queens, because of JFK Airport. And she herself is most definitely a victim. She said she was rarely left alone to sleep for 4 hours at a stretch. They were always sending her little messages. Maybe we'll get back to her later. But Elena Freeland is fabulous. She's too wonderful, but I'm not hinting that she didn't do the work. I'm sure she did do the work. So her book is called Under an Ionized Sky, and they say very recently she has yet a more fresh one than that, but I haven't seen it. Does Jacob know?
I'm sure someone will let us know. And that's Jacob B., an old friend. Good to see you here, Jacob. I wonder what happened to you. I hadn't seen you for a while. Good to see you're alive and kicking in our dystopian world. But so the other things about Hawaii, obviously we heard so many stories from people who've been there that the police were acting, even for them, acting very strangely, apparently stopping people from escaping and seemingly putting people in more danger. And then you had the idea that they never did find out. I don't think they kept, because you had a few reporters actually asking for the number of children or something that were missing. And I don't know if did they ever get that figure, but there was so much going on there. But then the story, like it just kind of dropped. What happened? Like, did anything get resolved there? Obviously no journalists asked any questions or found out why this strange stuff was going on.
Well, I'll say this. the thing about the children, possibly all of the community are under a sort of gag order, like, we are helping you live in a hotel for 3 months. Oh, it's already more than August, September.
Yeah.
It'll be a half year soon, and they are getting, I don't know if they're getting free food or what, but at least they are not physically homeless on the street. And possibly that came with a trade-in, but I don't know that. I'm just sort of thinking maybe,
Right.
because you certainly don't hear them there. And when I went over there, I was being my usual nosy Parker self. And when I really went out of sympathy. But Geo near, oh wow, what a title.
That's
my
a
God.
yeah, that's the book I guess they're talking about. Stephanie, good to see. And Stephanie, thank you for having the courage to walk into a doctor's office with Masking the Truth. I'm glad you weren't apprehended. It's the most shadow banned book in the world. Thank you very much.
Oh,
Appreciate that.
what does the name again?
Masking the Truth: How COVID-19 Destroyed Civil Liberties and Shut Down the World. That's my book. Sherry Tenpenny wrote the foreword.
Your book. I'm sorry, I didn't know of it. Oh my gosh, I must get it immediately.
I wish I had extra copies to send you, but that one is just, I don't, but I that would be one. It's the most, I think it's the most important book out there and that I've written. And they are shadow banning it. They're playing games. Amazon won't put up reviews. The libraries are hiding. It's you wouldn't believe it. I'm sorry. I don't want to take your time, but go ahead.
I would believe it. Oh, would I believe it? I get fooled around with too, but anyway. So when I went over there, I had seen, I want to give credit to 3 people who have websites. The most popular one, he has many thousands of viewers. He's a real estate agent there named Eric West. So he's good at videoing because he's been selling houses for years by making very nice videos. But as soon as this happened, he was out there with a camera, and he is probably the person to be most credited, but others have done it also, to take pictures of the cars, which, by the way, are a little bit like the cars at 9/11.
Yeah.
I was never in on that aspect of 9/11, so I don't know, but the outside of the car, the general hulk looks okay, but there's nothing inside. And that means there's no people inside either. So apparently this directed energy thing, which works by heat mainly, heats you up. And it took out all the glass. So I saw some of the cars, they sort of look like cars, but there's no sign of a windshield or windows on the sides because the heat melted them. And the heat required to do that to glass, they tell me, is a lot greater than, it's less than what is required to knock down the car. And you mentioned the color blue. So this man that I pointed out as Eric West, his website is on YouTube, and it is called Hawaii Real Estate. That's the name of it. And he shows you even how the blue cars were saved. So you could have 5 cars in a row that are all
the whole blue thing.
out,
Yeah.
And then you have a very nice blue one. And I don't quite understand that, except I'm told that certain laser knows the difference between the colors in this world, which are not just colors, but represent other factors, and they will stay away from blue, which is why I'm sitting in front of a blue.
So no one's going to get you.
Get me tonight. I walk out the door. Well, okay. We make jokes. It is no joke that you asked about the numbers of children. Skipping the children for a minute, they agreed to 97 deceased. Okay, but locals are saying much more, but I really wouldn't know. It's not for me to judge. So, but they did say 1,200 houses disappeared, and you would think there might be 1 or 2 in each. So
yeah.
Although some escaped, but not many. And the fact that they're not talking about the children is bothering a lot of people, but I won't get into it. I would have no way to know how many kids were alive in the first place, how many are alive today. I just don't know. That seems to be yet another way that the officials are keeping people destabilized by not giving information. I mean, why can't they say if it was 200 kids? Okay, it was 200 kids. That's a fact. And they also have, the government has many ways, as was true 9/11 you just talked about, Osama bin Laden, or Boston, you talk about Jahar. Did we discuss my new website? I have a new website.
Tell us about it. Sure.
It's called JaharCompletelyInnocent.com. But don't go looking for it now. We're talking about Hawaii. And this ability of the government, as I said, on this little T-shirt where they have three things, which is not allowed, no exit, you were held back on the road, no water, so firemen couldn't use water to help with fires, and no siren warning, which apparently they claim the islands of Hawaii have the most, efficient way of warning people, mainly for a tidal wave, but it's used for other things like just a rainstorm. And tidal wave may make you think, do you recall, I'm going to guess it was about 3 years ago, there was a nuclear scare, and the people of Hawaii were told by robocall that at 8:30 in the morning, you've got 25 minutes to hide. I don't know how you're going to hide from a nuclear bomb is on its way. And later, someone said, "Oh, it was an accident." No, it wasn't. You just don't have an accident.
Well, in this case, though, wasn't then the opposite happened, where the emergency warning didn't go out about this or something? What didn't they weren't? I've heard that the resident, something was wrong with the system or something. They didn't get any information. Correct me on that.
I believe on August 8th, communication in general was practically non-existent. Telephones weren't happening, and yeah. So that's all I know about that. Now, Stephanie has just written, I don't understand how anyone can look at these fires and chemtrails and not realize they're not natural. That's true.
Sure. Well, they need to explain again. First of all, if we had a real free press, we had people, we had professional journalists, not people like you or me, or that are just, average citizens with very little resources, that were asking the kind of questions. Okay, how do you not know how many kids are missing? I mean, how were the police stopping people from escaping? Why did so many people say that? And why don't you question the police? What do you're supposed to be saving lives. Why are you trying to, seemingly trap people? And of course, the way these things, so people like you are theorizing that these are directed energy weapons, weapons, because of the way these fires were. The blue stuff wasn't hit. And, you'd have like a tree burned right next to a house or vice versa and stuff. Talk about how it really looked directed, because it didn't look natural, because I would think of a big fire's raging, shouldn't everything around it burn? But it didn't work out that way. It's kind of like what we've seen in California in the past, where people speculated about dews.
That's why I went in for the testimony, just to have somebody say, only from their own little mouth, I'm not MIT, I'm not the DOD, I'm just Mary, but I'm saying, I look at those fires, I look at the fact that a tree is right here and a house is next to it. The house totally disappears in the tree.
Yes. Yeah.
And we know that's not within the book. And we also do know that a directed energy weapon can do that. In fact, there is a 2016 little film, you can find it today, it's on, ask for U.S. Navy directed weapons or something, and this man is sitting there at his sort of pilot's desk on a boat, and when he pushes the button, he's killing, but it was, what do you call a make-believe person, a cutout, like a cutout of the person on a little fishing boat, and he just goes bing, and the whole thing disappears. And that's on, the Navy is boasting that that's 7 years ago. How many years ago? Almost 8. That they can do that. So it isn't as if, it's not woo-woo stuff. There's a lot of woo-woo stuff out there. I can't stand woo-woo. But this is, well, I want to say again, this man, Elena Friedland is wonderful. But here's a guy who isn't there to say to you, look how naughty they are. I mean, that's what Elena and I are saying. Well, this guy thinks it's wonderful. It's his business. It's what he does. He's into, maybe he works for Raytheon or DARPA. I don't know who he works for. But it's his job. And he's meaning to be, I'll just read page 128. The next class of directed energy weapons, which we will address in chapter 7, cyberspace weapons. Okay. And he says it does not represent a potential threat, but actual current acts of war. So if you want to knock out all the computers of Russia, you might be able to do it. Cyber attacks. I know nothing of that, and I will not pretend that I know anything of it. But if Mr. Del Monte, Louis Del Monte, says it, I take him to be sincere.
Well, when you started getting into this, so you started doing your own investigation, and ultimately, what did you do in terms of investigating this? Did you try to contact anybody, and then tell us again about how? I guess this is what compelled you to run for public office. Now we're going to talk about that and give you a campaign platform and hope everybody votes for you. But so how did this start, and how did you get involved in investigating it?
I'm not even sure investigating is the word. I like law angles into things. I would never have been involved in Boston Marathon were it not for the court transcripts, which were given to me by a girl in Canada who paid for the whole thing. She must have paid a fortune. And you know, the court transcripts sort of belong to the court reporters. I don't quite get it, but you know, if it was government material, we have a right to it, right? But
right.
The court
supposedly
have some kind of very funny. Have some kind of a copyright over it. Okay, so how did I get involved? Well, right away I thought, what's available for either prosecution or lawsuits? I mean, that's how I think. Look for a solution. The law is there. It's wonderful. The law is always available. It's always excellent. Just they won't use it. But as I mentioned about EPA, I only discovered that angle Monday, 3 days ago. What day is today? It was that holiday.
It's Friday.
Holidays.
January 5th.
Did
Friday.
Christmas being on a Monday kind of upset you? All right. So, what am I talking about? I'm talking about the fact that on that day, when they had anybody come in, and one woman said the whales, which we like to watch, they won't come near the shore anymore because we've already had a sewage ejection, and now when we have, you know, the debris. The reason for that hearing this week was, should we pile all the stuff that we scrape up from the Heine into this new thing? Possibly they've already started to do it. And they said it will have a felt lining, but we will give it a double felt lining. My God, that's a joke. I mean, it's really insulting. Double felt. You know, the chemicals will get through it. And it's not very far from the ocean. So they will pass down, I think, through the ground. And the next thing you know, you have hurt the sea, and so we won't have our whales anymore. Well, that's just one person's thing. But another person, and I wouldn't have foreseen this, it's not my thing, she said EPA is able to tap into eminent domain. I don't think she put it that way, but in the Fifth Amendment, it says, we can't take your property, folks, but only for public use and with compensation. So you may know there was a court case 15 years ago, something like that. It's called Kelo, Kelo, Kelo versus New London. And until that day, the only way they could take your house was like for a road. You know, we have to get from A to B. You're in the way. We'll buy you up. Fine. Mm-hmm. But this time it was developers that wanted Mrs. Kelo's area, and the public use. It's okay to do it for public use. Well, that someone made the argument that those developers will be paying higher taxes. See? So it'll all come into the public purse, and it's a good thing that we kicked Mrs. Kelo out. So I would say since that moment, you can't depend on the Supreme Court to respect your right to your land.
Absolutely. And Chris Graves has a lot of questions for you. We'll get to that. Try to get to that later. He has a Sandy Hook question. He has a Las Vegas shooting question. So we'll get to those, Chris. But I want her to be able to talk about Hawaii as much as.
Should I? I can just answer this one. I can't answer Las Vegas. It's not in my league.
Okay.
I don't know Is Mary Nova somewhere? Maybe in this room. I have a book. I do. I found it.
You're good, Mary.
You may recall that I had a book called Unreality, and Sandy Hook. Well, I slightly changed it. It's now says The Human Mind and Sandy Hook's Unreality. And are there lawsuits? This book is based on the lawsuits. If it weren't for the lawsuits, you mean if there'd been lawsuits to help us? Oh, no. The lawsuits are to build up the case, the false case.
Yeah, I don't think they allow lawsuits to help us. What do we have? Do you know what the status before we get off this? Poor Wolfgang Halbig. I had him on my show a long time ago. I haven't been able to contact him ever since. What is his status? I know he was sick. His family left him. He lost everything just trying to do truth. Do you know anything about how Wolfgang is doing?
Yeah, he's fighting all the time. And the main thing he's fighting is that he was arrested for something that he shouldn't have been arrested for. And they wrote down felony, but actually it was a misdemeanor. And he would know the difference because he used to be a state trooper in Florida.
Yeah.
And he can't, and that caused him to have to go to jail. Granted, only for like a weekend, but so what?
Sure.
You haven't committed a felony and you've been dragged off in the middle of the night.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
I don't know his age. It's maybe 70. I don't know. And
I think he's close to your age. I'm pretty sure.
Could even be older. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
And by now, Sandy Hook is 10 years in the past. They had their little 10-year memorials,
Yeah.
By the way, there's a photo in here, which I say is, of course, fake. And it looks like at least 40 policemen in it. Firemen. If I can get it. They're all lined up. They're all wearing the exact costume and the exact boots.
Mm-hmm.
And they're attending a funeral. Now, anybody who's not totally nuts like me would look at that and it would be proof. It's just, it hits your eyes. It's got to be real. But there is a group, have you ever heard of it, called Crowds on Demand? And you just pay them and they show up and they do what you want. So maybe none of those firemen are actually firemen. They maybe just showed up.
Well, that gets into the whole crisis actor thing, advertise. I mean, that's, the crisisactors.org used to exist. They must have gotten rid of the website because you can't find it now, but they're a real thing.
Based in England. It might still be there. And it says, we work on crisis management. And that means keeping the truth down.
Well, it goes into everything. Like when I was, and Chris knows about this because Chris Graves has helped so much with my research, but he knows, God, I forgot the name. I'm sure Chris will know it. I think her name was Smith, Dr. Smith, but she's the one that put out this absurd disinfo about COVID, that they needed ventilators and the patients were overwhelmed in the hospital. The New York Times put it on the front page. She violated all the red rules, all the medical privacy acts. Nobody said anything to her about it. But we looked her up a little bit. I tried emailing her. She never answered me, shockingly enough. But she was said to be an expert in medical simulation. Now, what does that conjure up to? What is medical how can you not develop these kind of theories? Well, I've never heard of that. Medical simulation. What does that mean? Faking? I mean, how would you read that?
You can buy a kind of a blood thing. It's called Moulage or something. It's well known. And the justification for it is if you're teaching soldiers while they're still in good shape in America, they're going to go overseas, and you slap a bit of blood on their buddy, maybe that helps them get ready for the real thing. I don't know. But this product can be purchased openly. Something like the word moulage.
Yeah,
and
Stephanie Pappas, moulage. She's got it right here. Stephanie Green, moulage. Yeah.
Moulage. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, so back to the story of the lawsuits. I'll just name two. Halbig probably had, I don't know if he has a lawsuit going. I don't know. But the two major ones, one is called Remington v. Soto or Soto v. Remington.
Remington lawsuit, yeah.
One of the families. And first I think they received money from a few places by filing for benefits of victims of crime or whatever it is. They did get, the families allegedly were paid. And then they tried to hit the manufacturer of the gun. Now, their complaint started out, I think, you lousy manufacturer, you marketed your product to young people. But in fact, the whole story rests on the mother having given him a Christmas. The mother had registered guns in her name in the house. Not, it was easy for him to get a gun. You didn't have to say that it was marketed to young people. And then the state of Connecticut, that's where the lawsuit went first, I think, they said, no, gun manufacturers are protected. But then they took it higher up and they won based on what I just said about the marketing practices of who needs an assault weapon that can kill like you would kill in battle?
Right.
You don't need that to defend your home.
Well, what about Remington? When we first heard, I remember being very hopeful. I thought, wow, finally, because Remington originally looked like they were going to fight the suit, and they demanded to have I think they demanded death certificates or school records or something originally.
Oh, no.
Well, what happened? Because they dropped that, but that was a great strategy. What happened there?
First of all, they hardly put up a fight. Now, they were being sued for $231 million.
That's all.
And you'd think that should go to some effort.
Yeah.
They didn't. They didn't make that fuss about, no, we weren't selling to a child or something like that, but they lost that one. And then after that, they didn't put in any evidence like, remember from the helicopter, we could see 4 men with guns, and maybe it wasn't our gun. No, they didn't go in for any of that. And as regards children's death certificates or school certificates, there's another case. Mr. Fetzer is the plaintiff in that one. I may tell you in a minute about that, but the death certificates was actually school records. So it was, the bottom line here is that Remington was in on it. Remington wanted to lose because that proves that it's true, right? Why else would they give out millions? Now, I doubt that they did give out any of the money. I don't think it ended up that way.
No,
but,
I don't think
they say they paid it, but I don't think so. After all, why pay parents who aren't really parents? And back in the days of fighting for the school certificates, someone said, we want to see the kids' conduct records. These children are in the first grade.
Mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous to say that. But that whole point was to be ridiculous and have the public say, you shouldn't do that. Come on.
Yes, they're harassing them. Why are they doing that? Yes, yeah.
And you would think that someone would say, for the sake of the gun owners, yeah, all right, we'll give up on the school conduct, but we'd like to see their birth and death certificates. No. Remington went along with their opponent's request to hide all of that. So you cannot get a hold of the birth certificates of those kids. Something just came on the screen. See recent interview with Professor James Fetzer on the Sandy Hook event. Okay, I don't know.
And you also can. I've known Jim Fetzer for years. I presented on the Zoom with a lot of other people, including Stephanie Sledge, who I'm sure you know, and Sarah Westall, lots of other people. I did a presentation on COVID and about masking the truth. So people, I've left that link on my social media, so you can go watch that if you're interested.
Where is your social media that I can get the link?
I'll have to send it to you. Yeah, you're not on social media, are you? Are you on? Because you don't. Are you on Twitter or Facebook or anything?
I got kicked off of Twitter.
Okay,
I haven't got kicked off of YouTube, and I don't know why. It must be
that's good. Yeah, I'll have to send you the link to the presentation.
All right. Now I'll tell you this about Soto and the Remingtons. The Remington changed the name of the case, as quite was proper to do, to Bushmaster. So the money was being paid out by that particular gun. They have other guns. But nevertheless, Remington, who I now see, started business in 1910 as part of J.P. Morgan. And another little tidbit, but unrelated to Sandy Hook, is that during the Civil War, the DuPonts were providing the ammo, not the guns, but the ammo. Thank you. For both sides. So just imagine that. If they wanted one side to win, all they had to do was hold back on the ammo. Of course, they didn't want to hold back because they like to have were fighting. However, today, whereas you think you see NRA and all these NGO type pro-gun people fighting the manufacturers, maybe they're not really fighting them, and maybe they are all infiltrated so that even gun owners are not really.
Well, that's what happened with the lawsuit for Dominion against Fox News. Fox News didn't put up any defense, fired Tucker Carlson, and find out Fox News has a financial interest in Dominion. So it's all a joke. It's theater.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Now, the other lawsuit here, I think you started to mention it, Mr. Fetzer had a copy. He wrote a book called, I think he wrote like 4, all sounding very similar. Nobody died in Boston. Nobody died at St.
Right.
And he has one on Parkland, but it has a different name. It's not Nobody Died.
Okay.
It's called the Parkland Puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
Looks to me like nobody died, maybe at Parkland, but I don't want to touch any case.
No question. We got to be careful because I make no representations. I don't know what, but we should be able to ask questions. And there are strange elements in all those stories, and you have to ask the questions because they're things that don't make sense. And you shouldn't be prosecuting people for asking questions. They're not being, like Alex Jones was unfairly, he said many times, they were accusing him of going to parents' houses and urinating on their graves, all kinds of nonsense that he never did, and they have no evidence for that. But that's what they accused him of, and the public's ready to believe anything. And it's just, problem is the public is too damn stupid, Mary. That's the we have to. It's hard to convince them because they, you can't wake up somebody that won't be woken up.
Yeah, I certainly think that is the case. In fact, I wonder how many of us are there. What percent are you and me? Were we 3% or 20%?
Well, no, I think everybody that voted for Trump, and again, I'm not a Trump fan, but everybody that voted for Trump, 70, 80 million people, whatever, I think all of them are awake to some degree. To some degree. Now they're receptive to some of this stuff. Now what we're talking about, much less, but they're millions. There are millions of us out there that are. The problem is that none of us have any power. That's the problem, is that we're millions of us out there, but we have these kinds of platforms and these kinds of books, but we don't have. That's why Tucker Carlson, I don't care what anybody says about it, he was putting on some good stuff, and he did have the platform, and it's gone now, and people, I don't know what Tucker Carlson is or was. All I can tell you is he was saying things that I agreed with almost all the time. Again, I don't know what his agenda was or whatever, but he was putting it out there, and he still. So I look at people and take them at face value until proven otherwise. But I'm looking at that. But go ahead. I'm sorry. So we're way off track because I want to talk. What caused you to? Now you ended up deciding to go for public office. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, it is connected to Hawaii. I have gone for public office before, and without any real plan to win.
Mm-hmm. Well, needless to say,
I live in New Hampshire, where Mrs. Nikki Haley is running. She's in my mailbox almost every day with a color postcard.
Oh, geez.
I don't know what that costs. We only have a small population, 1.4 million in New Hampshire, and only half of those are Republican, and not all of those are adults. So she probably doesn't have to send out more than. She must pay at least $50,000 per shot, and she's done 25 times already, and doesn't have much of a message. But I wouldn't even send out one because I haven't got 50,000. And
exactly.
No one other than the chosen few. In Australia, we call it pre-selection. At least they're open about it. If I wanted to run for parliament down there, Adelaide, where I lived for 37 years, I couldn't have just put forth my name as I can here in New Hampshire and say, please vote for Mary. You have to go through, you have to.
Australia's harder to get on the ballot than here, because here they make you go through ropes if you're, third party or whatever. If you're not.
Third party, you're right. They have to get all the signatures. But if you're in either Republican or Democrat, you just sign your name, Mary Maxwell, Republican, and you're on the ballot. So I am on the ballot for 2 weeks from now, the presidential primary in New Hampshire. January 25th.
Oh, you're running for president. I didn't realize that. Wow, that's all. You got my vote, Mary.
But you can't vote for me because you're not in.
No, I can't.
So 4 years ago, I did it, and on that year, Mr. Trump got 129,000, and Governor Weld from Massachusetts crossed the border to sign up, and he got about 10% of what Trump got. So that was an anti-Trump vote because people in New Hampshire did not want Mr. Weld. And then Mary got 900 and something. Cool. I came in third. Of course, that third was not even 10% of the guy who was 10% of Trump. So, but never mind. It was easy to get on the ballot. And this time I did it again, but it was related to Hawaii. I wasn't going to bother this year. I mean, who needs it at my age? But I thought, I can't let this go by. And it's not the same as Boston. My interest in the Boston Marathon is Boston. That's my hometown, and I am so disgusted with people that, never mind, let's not go down there. But Hawaii is not part of my life. Of course, by living in Australia, I was often in Hawaii on the way to Australia. I don't really know it, but now I know it because I've had to find out more about it. And boy, do I admire those people. I should have said earlier that folks are calling it a land grab, and you can see that there's an argument that someone wants to take that land, and they may well do so, and they have really taken it already. It's razed to the ground. You can't touch any building. There is no buildings to touch.
They destroyed the crime scene.
Yes, the whole town went, almost all of it. And the town of Lahaina within the Maui Island. And although people say it's a land grab, okay, you can make that argument well, but to me, it's more like a genocide. It's more like, Mary Maxwell is a problem, but she's only one. But that whole town, that whole indigenous community in Hawaii is a big fat Mary Maxwell.
Really? What is it? What is it about that town?
They love their ancestry and their ancestors. They love the sacredness of the place. And if you could see it on a better day, you would say, this is an amazing place. And they believe, and they might even be right, that there are certain energy waves or whatever that just join right in that place in the middle of the Pacific. And they have a philosophy, it's called Ho'oponopono. And when I heard of it years ago, I thought, come on. But they believe it. And it's based on, Christianity is supposedly, Jesus said, love one another, right? Mm-hmm. These people go further. They're very united, and they'll be willing to unite with you too after a while if you've sort of proved that you're not fake. But their altruism and their generosity is extraordinary. And also, they have a rule of forgiveness. That's that Ho'oponopono thing. I, the individual, must take full responsibility. And by the way, Mary Maxwell does. I think you probably do too, John. Everything that is happening in America to me, I'm doing. It doesn't matter whether I had any hand in doing it. I do take the responsibility. And the Hawaiian indigenous, I'm talking about the original people from this area, they want to give forgiveness at all times. Now, that could even get in the way of this little problem of sorting out. The people lost their homes on that day in August. They need to have a home. So it has to get solved in some way. You can't just say, don't worry, we love you.
Do they have insurance policies or anything? We know that. I mean, Keith S. over here in Rockfin Chat says what they did in Hawaii is insane. I just don't see how the people are just accepting it. The locals, I mean. I didn't mean to miss you. And any word over here said Sandy Hook got him divorced. Boy, that's a tough price to pay. Sorry about that. But,
was that a throwback to the How Big story? What you
I'm monitoring this. I haven't been able to get sort of Rockfin Chat. I'm looking at. And by the way, we are broadcasting live on the new freeworld.fm as well. That has a chat room over there. I've been checking it. It doesn't look like people are getting used to that. So that's another avenue for you. So we're streaming live to 3 places, and I think it's going out over my Twitter. I don't know. Hopefully it's working.
All right. I kind of forget where we were at the moment. Oh, I was explaining. I want to tell you these are special people. And later in the show, if you're willing, run that film of the music that I sent you. But it's 11 minutes, but you could just play part of it.
Sure.
Hello, John Mother.
Well, I can bring it up now. You want to run it now? We can do it.
Do a little bit of it now to show how strong they are. They were fighting, this was 4 years ago, they were fighting the placement of a big military telescope on their land, and it was right on the sacred part of the land. And they brought people from all around the world to help protest, but the protest sounds very happy. It's musical. It's just amazing to me that they could do this so well. Are you able to?
This should be playing. Let me know if you can hear this. The videos. Yeah, the video's loading. You should see the video loading there. Hopefully, come on, video.
I can see it. Yeah.
And we should. You hear that? Can you hear that?
Yeah, you can push it on. It starts off a bit slow. By the way, I don't know why the Union Jack is on the Hawaiian state flag, but it is.
Okay, let me.
Could you push it on a little bit to where they're more jumping around singing?
All right, let me move it forward here.
Aren't you clever?
Okay.
Woo. Now you have to.
I'm just learning how to do these things, Mary.
Each group is in. Man is better. Well, that'll do for the moment.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
That you can leave it for the moment.
Did you say something,
Mary?
Mary?
The point was, they had all those groups operating at the same moment. Now, you would have thought they got a film from the ones doing it in Ireland, and then they spliced them together. No. They were all singing around the world at the same moment for this protest of the land. So, long story short, when I said that community is a big Mary Maxwell, I mean they are a real source of trouble because they understand the meaning of self-determination, and they understand how the water and other resources around their island have been, pardon me, but sort of hijacked by the military. Indeed, I looked on Wikipedia to learn that 1 out of every 10 Hawaiian persons today, not natives, anybody, is military. So we have all sorts of installments there, and including ships that are always aircraft carriers. They're all around the place. And they're in Pearl Harbor too. Right? Let's not go down that trail. Okay, so much love, Mary. I remembered you from before, John.
Yeah, there's your secret admirer, John. Little John. Good to see you, John.
Knows what you're doing. All right. Now you were going to go off on a different track, Don. So please do. You were going to bring in another matter entirely.
I what? Well, I've been going on lots of different tracks, but I mean, you're running. You're running for in the presidential primary, and is your main issue going to be Hawaii, or are you running on anything else?
My main issue is Hawaii. It's almost my only issue, and what can I do about it? Who will listen? But I'll try. However, and this is the reason I wanted to come on the show tonight, and I'm looking for anybody who will give me an idea. I do want to mention that insurance thing because you brought that up. Right now, people are putting in a claim. They own the house is not there anymore. Hey, I've been paying insurance all these years, and I'm going to get money. And they say, no, it was an act of God. I believe they can fight that in the court, and then they can bring in this material about the blue houses and all the proof that it was directed energy weapons, and maybe that would be a way to get in. But I was trying to find other ways to get in. And during my little 3-minute testimony, you may have heard me say the Environmental Protection Agency has a rule, which makes sense, that if they have to go to clean up toxic stuff in your backyard because you wouldn't know how to do it. I mean, it takes experience. So they will go and do it for you. And of course, they will charge you. But they want to know first why it happened. And if you were to say, it wasn't my fault, and you could point to someone else, I believe they could get the money, the payment for what they did from that person. But if they can't get the money, it apparently says in the law, I didn't read it in detail, but I read on their own website, epa.gov, they have the right under the law that was passed in. Does the word Superfund do anything for you? This is called Superfund stuff.
Sure. Superfund used to be a popular phrase in terms of financing political campaigns.
Oh, okay. Well, it's all like that. And they will, as I said, there are two avenues. Getting into court is my job. That's where I want to go, even though I can tell you I have been 100% defeated in court. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, I believe in the Constitution. I believe in America. And I'm trying to see ways to get in. So two things came out of that EPA thing. Apparently, you would be able to fight your way in that it was insurance companies. Insurance company says we won't pay you, and then you try to fight that it wasn't an act of God, because that's why they are saying we don't pay for acts of God.
Yeah.
And the other way to get in on this EPA is apparently the entire city of Lahaina is now sort of fenced off as one big toxic waste area. They're not really explaining either. If they would tell us what is in the toxic waste, that might very well reveal what kind of fire destruction occurred.
Yeah.
But that's not my hope of getting in. It was the blame factor. And if it is true in the fine print, I didn't check yet for the EPA, that they must make a finding of blame, because how else can they decide if it's your fault and you don't want to pay for us to do the cleaning? We have a right to your land. So that's an interesting way to get into court. However, Mary's always much more interested in prosecutions than in lawsuits. I'll do lawsuits if I have to, but my preference is prosecutions. And the fact that we do not punish anyone anymore, no matter how egregious the crime. And can it be more egregious than dropping something on your land which wipes you and your family out?
No, and you brought up a point about insurance. Most people don't realize, and I didn't learn this until we had to file a couple homeowner policies on our house. And it's amazing what things, I believe it's like nuclear war is not covered in any policy. So if you ever had a nuclear war, you're out of luck. I think you can get maybe special tidal wave insurance or tsunami insurance if you're in those areas, but it doesn't come with it. So just think of the luck. I mean, the people in Florida, obviously, I'm sure they have special riders where they pay extra for hurricane insurance or flood plains and all that stuff. So your insurance company, you're paying for all this stuff. They're probably going to cancel you anyhow if you have too big of a claim, regardless of if it's merited or not. But the idea that those people in Hawaii could lose everything like this, regardless of how it happened, if it was an act of God or whatever, and that they can't, there's nothing they can do to, where are the Sandy Hook funds, all these funds that happens in all these big, why don't we see some big fund that raises millions of dollars to help out the people in Hawaii? But they've dropped that story. Before I go back to you, I want to know that William Hale, who is listening from Perth, Australia, so you should be familiar with that. And Stephanie Green you see on the screen there, she's behind her reading, but she wants to know where she can get your books, Barry.
Okay. Now, here's the deal. First of all, Stephanie, if you email me, I will send them to you in physical form, but you can, even right now, grab them as a download. Most of them are there for free at my campaign website called constitutionandtruth.com. But I'm glad that you asked about my books, because that reminds me of something I want to say about this. Can you remove the musical thing from the screen, Don?
Oh, yes, sure. Let me hold on a second. Let me
I can hold up my little products here.
Okay.
To repeat, anybody wants my books can get them pretty much all free download except ones that are being sold by Try-and-Day Press. I figure he's entitled to his money, so I don't give it away. But this one is called Prosecution for Treason. And the reason I want to mention it has to do with Ho'oponopono. It's not for me to walk into Hawaii and say, do it my way, go to court, sue, prosecute, fight. It's their life, it's their land. And they say, forgive. So I haven't quite figured out what is the contact between courts and forgive. But I am a forgiver. And in my book, Prosecution for Treason, published in 2011 and mainly aimed at Congress, those are traitors in Congress. Oh, I didn't know that. Part 1 is called Traitors. Come out with your hands up. Part 2. Why do our brains seem to be missing? All right, but I want to say something about forgiveness, and that is my dedication in this book says, to our prodigal sons, come home, come home. I think there's more scope in there for not just forgiveness, but for confession. I say this because my main study since the year 2005 has been mind control. And now I'll mention again that Mary Gregory, although she's talking about things coming from the plane over her house in JFK, she's really a mind control sort of victim, and she knows it and she details it for you. And some of my other friends over the years have detailed for me what happened to them. And under MK Ultra. Now you say, how did I happen to walk into so many friends? I made it my business to do so. I went in the year 2005 and in each of the following 4 years to attend a conference for survivors. And from that came some friendships, naturally. And this thing of the forgiveness, it wouldn't surprise me if most of the baddies out there today are not operating freely with their own mind. Because none of us is totally free. Your culture puts pressure on you, and religion and whatever, especially if you're in a cult, you have no choice. But I also think, I'll give an example. My friend now deceased, Trish Fotheringham, who was wonderful, lived in Canada. And she was only tortured from age birth to 19. And after that, she fell out of the system because her grandfather was in the military in Canada. He was her main torturer, I think. And when he died, nobody else could be bothered to do it. So she fell out. And then it wasn't until she was in her 30s, she was attending a parenting class, she suddenly found out what psychology is. And she spent quite a lot of time looking back on how they were able to get her to do bad things, including, she says she killed a couple of kids. I think maybe she didn't, because, I mean, it might have been part of the game. They want you to feel bad about hurting others. It's one of the items. And two people that she thinks she killed were very well trained, like her, and therefore they were valuable to the government. And you don't go throwing something valuable. But anyway, she would cry at the thought of the memory that she might have killed them. But many of them killed others. I know one, and she's famous, and she has written a book, but I'm not sure she said this in the book. She said it to me, that she might have said it in the book. Now I don't want to give her name because I'm going to say what she said. She says she killed 80 people in her day. But she's a perfectly decent person. She was in another mind when she was doing it.
And how did she kill them? How does she do it? Like, in what way?
I'm afraid this is going to give away who she is. What the hell? There may be many of them. She would stick you with a curare needle. She would have a ring, okay? So she's wearing her, Princess Diane's sapphire ring. Well, I mean, not that particular ring, but a pretty ring like that. And if you pull away the stone or pop it open, inside is a little needle with curare. And all you have to do is jab your friend that you're going to kill with the curare. You know what I mean by curare, where you can't move?
Yeah, I've heard. But are these people, they're mind controlled? They're being triggered to do it? They don't even know they're doing it?
That's true of almost all the things they did. I'll switch to a different example. This is again Trish up in Canada, said that some of her friends who were trained with her would go to ecology meetings. Before we called it environmentalism. Do you remember? It was ecology.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Sure.
And they would be like greenies, and they would attend meetings as though they were protesting harm to the environment. And they were sincere. They thought they were doing that, but she said, no, they didn't know. They were being sent to check up on the group to make sure that, in other words, they were acting like FBI informants, you might say. And she's sure they didn't know it. They were consciously aware that they were going to those meetings and doing those things. They weren't aware that at the end of the meeting, they would make a secret report back to the boss. See, so they're like, we're wearing two hats at the same time. But the Karari death is you sort of stab somebody quickly and then they can't move. Then you can either call on your compatriot to help kill, or you could even do something more elaborate that you couldn't do if the person was struggling and pushing you away. So anyway, yeah.
Well, I want to say to over in the Rockfin chat, Keith has said he's trying out the Free World FM chat, and I think that's you there. If you're Cool Habitat, I see you. It says testing, so you're there. If you were trying to do that, again, I'm trying to monitor these all three chat rooms. We have most going on in YouTube. Yes, that must be Keith. It does seem bad. I will talk to Tony, but I know they're still working at the kinks there. But I appreciate you. Yeah.
Sam has asked me a question. I'll answer it. Wouldn't it be easier to run as a state rep? Yes. Or as an independent for a congressional seat? No. The getting of the 10,000, how many signatures you need is not possible. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Robert Kennedy has now done it in a couple of states, but of course he has a huge fan.
Yeah, people don't realize that the two-party system has a stranglehold, and we saw that when Ralph Nader and Pat Buchanan were running probably back in 2000 or whatever, and both of them were well-known figures, national figures, and neither one of them, they wouldn't let them in the debates, and they had such restrictive what they have to be in the polls, and these polls are ridiculous. Does anybody really believe that Nikki Haley is surging and Vivek Ramaswamy is at 4%? I'm sorry, I don't believe that.
You don't believe Vivek is as much as 4, or
no? He would. I think he has. Well, I would think. I mean, what does the Republican base want to hear? He's the only one saying anything that they would want to hear. He should be leading the polls. I mean, it's ridiculous.
40, and they crossed out the 0.
Yeah, maybe that's it. But yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, and also run as a state rep. Well, yes, I could do that, but I must say, I have a national mind. Although we have a wonderful new young state rep here, name is Jason Gerhardt. This is his first year, and he is certainly doing his best.
Jason Gerhardt is he a writer? I think I know him.
You may know him from the IRS case.
I know a Jason Gerhardt is a writer. Okay, I'm sorry, but he writes horror novels. It probably can't be the same guy.
No, this boy would not be writing horror novels because he's too busy being a legislator.
Okay.
But he was kind of well known for a while as a person who was arrested for protesting the IRS.
Okay. Interesting.
Now, where were we? Why did I get into this? I'm sorry, but I just couldn't let the assault on Hawaii go unnoticed. I had to do something, and it's so easy in New Hampshire. Just put your name in and you're a candidate for president. So I would hope to thank you for putting me on your show. Nobody else has invited me, of course, and you can be sure the local newspapers in New Hampshire will not mention my name. And even years ago, when I was comparatively innocent, in 2006, I ran for the Congress seat in New Hampshire, and I ran on the platform 9/11 was an inside job.
Oh, and I got you a lot. I think it drew a lot of attention from the press. Did you get a lot of interviews on TV, Mary, with that, with your platform?
I got an interview. I'll send it to you later because it's really funny. I got interviewed by 6 news writers altogether for one press. It was, I believe, the Nashua Telegraph, and they sat me in the room to hit me with questions about 9/11. Of course, I thought, this is great. But that was just so they could justify an editorial the next day in which he said, Well, there's one candidate who's just too far out.
This kook is running. What is she saying? I love an inside job.
That's interesting that you think Vivek is higher in Iowa.
Yeah, I think that's what Vivek is saying. So we'll see. But I also, Stephanie, who I respect very much, says that Vivek is an Israel blind supporter. But but I would say compared to all the others, he's the only. I mean, RFK Jr. it's ridiculous the way he might as well move and become a citizen of Israel, and everybody else is. I mean, Nikki Haley wants to finish him off, and everything. So
she wants to finish China.
Yeah, she wants to finish everybody off, But Vivek is, I think, the by far the most even-handed, as much as he can be. Probably, I don't know that you can be much more than what he's doing. And again, I know. I got to tell you, I just one quick and everybody's going to tell me Vivek is a controlled opposition. I understand. I'm telling you, my son and I were watching an interview where he interviewed Alex Jones, and on the audio video on the bookshelf behind him was a copy of my book, Hidden History.
There you go.
You guys trust me. I didn't send it to him. What is Vivek doing with a copy of Hidden History? So how can I not love him? I mean, he's got my book.
Good. Now, I think DeSantis is not getting enough attention. He's not only like Vivek, but he's already proved himself.
They seem to be turning away from him, saying it. That again. I don't know what they're planning to do. People ask me that all the time. I have no idea if they're going to turn to Michelle Obama, if they're going to have Nikki Haley, if they're going to have Trump win and serve in prison. I don't know. And I'm sure it'll be something ridiculous.
This thing in Iowa, I don't really understand the caucuses. Do you? How they vote?
No, and that's I don't. The caucus system should be better, but going back to Pat Buchanan was robbed in several of those caucuses. Ron Paul was robbed because Iowa you'd think would be open. So again, Vivek should resonate with Iowa much more than New Hampshire, but I just don't see. I think the process is rigged.
Are you aware that Des Moines, Iowa, had a school shooting yesterday?
My sister was telling me something. Tell us about that. I don't know anything more than that. But
no, I don't know anything more than that either. But it would seem kind of timely, wouldn't it?
Yeah, how about that? Yeah, maybe they can ask Ramaswamy or Vivek to. Do you hear whether he really handled that reporter very well when she asked him about white supremacy, but much better than any of the white candidates, I must say. And he handled it really well. He just said, that's a stupid question. Why are you asking me something so dumb? And it's I don't know. I know I get crushes on these people. I had a crush on Tulsi Gabbard one time. RFK Jr.
She's disappeared on the Hawaii issue. She's not to be seen.
Yeah, now there's a perfect example. She's from Hawaii, but again, she's disgraced herself. She sounds like Nikki Haley now about Israel and Hamas. So you can't trust. I met Tulsi Gabbard. I went to her campaign events, gave her a copy of Survival of the Richest, one of my books, took a picture grinning next to her, and obviously we all can get fooled, but I
thought she was wonderful when she was here a few years ago, and people from New Hampshire really opened their homes to her to have, dinners with anybody she wanted to invite. And then when she pulled out, they said she got 9% of the Democrat vote that year.
Yeah.
We're talking 4 years ago. Yeah. I know she must have got way more, because during that year when I was running as a Republican, I would say to Republican people, have you heard about Tulsi? And they'll say, yeah, she's great. So she was well known and well liked here, but 9%. Come on.
Yeah, that's why it's so disappointing. It goes back to when Ron Paul, my son, was really involved with his campaign in 2008. 08. It goes 8 or 12. Might have been 2012.
It was going against Obama in 08.
Yeah, but I think he was running for the Republican nomination in 2012. I think 2012 is when, maybe it could be 2008, but one of the ones where he was winning all the online polls. I mean, he was slaughtering. I mean, he was like
Ron Paul.
Yeah, Ron Paul, and yet they claimed Rick Tenn's Santorum was surging, kind of like Nikki Haley. No, but he had 5 people at a campaign events. We went to a Ron Paul campaign event around here. The line was wrapped 3 times around the building. You had cars going by that and we were all holding signs, honk if you're voting for Ron Paul, and everybody was honking. I mean, it was, you could see he was so, and that's why I don't know why they were surprised at the election, in 2020, because it's so obvious that they control this process. Because you could see in the case of Ron Paul, he probably legitimately won every primary and caucus, and they claimed he didn't win any. So, I mean, so I don't have much hope for Vivek, but
Yeah. Well, if you see the most important book, but I'll tell you the gist of it, and then you don't even have to see the book. Written by Jim Collier and his brother Ken. You may remember this.
Vote Scam. Yeah, Vote Scam.
1992. And he said that up to that point, I think he even used the name of Walter Cronkite, so it went back a bit. It was not Clinton onwards, it was before Clinton. And he said that this group called NES, News Election Service, which was composed of the AP, in those days, UPI, and the 3 television networks. CNN did not yet exist. And they would meet. Now, they're not supposed to meet, under the Sherman Antitrust Act. That's an interesting point. I told you, I'm desperately looking for inroads into this Hawaii thing.
But before we drop the Collier thing, though, I covered Vote Sam extensively by the Collier brothers, and this again shows you how deep this stuff goes. And I wrote a very commendable section in there about Victoria Collier, who was a daughter of one of them, because they both died way too young. Jim and Kenneth both left us way too soon.
Age 60 for Jim.
Yeah. I mean, that's young to us, So, but his one of their daughters, Victoria, was doing good work, I thought, on it. But I got in an argument with her. I was connected with her, and she got so incensed when I was writing Hidden History, because I sourced, I referenced Vote Scam a lot in my section on vote fraud. And she couldn't stand the fact that I was using the Spotlight, the old newspaper, the Spotlight, as a source, which was, I write for the American Free Press now, which is a successor to the Spotlight, because the Spotlight was driven into bankruptcy by the Anti-Defamation League, because they were so critical of Israel. So I said, he said, oh, you must be anti-Semitic. And I had no idea she was Jewish, or if it didn't even occur to me. But she was so incensed. I said, look, I have to use the Spotlight for a source on this, because they're the ones that published your father's work. Nobody else would touch it. They serialized it. They're the ones that interviewed them. I mean, I don't understand. And she just got so mad. And then later I see she deleted me from social media. But then later I looked up her Facebook account just to look and see. And sure enough, this, the daughter of the Collier brothers, she was going nuts with this Trump derangement syndrome, how ridiculous it was to say there was fraud in 2020, that Trump was not robbed. So again, it shows how so very disillusioning to me, because the Collier brothers did great work. She did great work originally, but the Trump derangement syndrome or something changed her. And she got in an argument with me about, I'm just using the only source that's there. I'm sorry, but so it's just, you brought him up, and I'm sorry. We can go back to Hawaii, but that's just
back to the Colliers with the fact that 1992, he was able to show that for many years preceding, this NES crowd would arrange, and he talked mostly about presidents, but all the way down to dog catcher. Why not? They could interfere electronically, and that wasn't quite the software that Dominion or any of the current ones are being accused of, but it was. Do you remember when we would vote by pulling the lever?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Well, you would assume that after you had said Kennedy or something, that your little number fell down into the bottom of this thing where they count later as Kennedy, but probably it fell down as Nixon. Yeah. And the entire thing was that the NES would agree in advance on who would win each election.
Yep.
And they would announce it at 8 p.m. when the polls closed, even though they couldn't have got some of those polls didn't even have phones, to call it.
Right.
So it's perfect. The Collier brothers did a perfect job of explaining that. You don't even need any of the 2,000 mules. That's good work. But that's about paper ballots that got added on afterwards. if you're able to reach in there and change, Eisenhower's votes to Kennedy, somebody.
Well, the Collier brothers, they videotaped the League of Women Voters doing the hanging chads thing way before 2000. This is back in the 80s. They were, for their efforts, the videotape was confiscated, and then Attorney General of Dade County, Florida, Janet Reno, later to become Attorney General and preside over the slaughter at Waco and so much other corruption, targeted them. I mean, they had a newspaper editor that was writing about it locally that was shot dead in his driveway. She wasn't, I mean, unbelievable stuff going on there. This is so much corruption in this, and it's such a shame. And that's why I really resent I don't care about Trump or anything, but the idea that this, we're election deniers when we're complaining, but this system is a joke. Somebody in the chat said if voting would change anything, it would be illegal. And there's that cynical statement, of course, but clearly, how can this not be obvious? But problems going back to Pat Buchanan, his people complaining, Ron Paul, then Trump has obliterated all that because it's all been wrapped up in him. And now any discussion of vote fraud from now on could get you prosecuted because he's being prosecuted for it.
Which of the prosecutions are you referring to?
Trump is being prosecuted in Georgia. Yeah. The same state where Stacey Abrams is still complaining that she was robbed. And I don't know. See, if I was on his defense team, but he always hires, again, that's why I call it the Trumpenstein Project. I think he's in on it. He hires the worst lawyers on earth. He has this good-looking young woman that's his main lawyer now, who, as I understand it, worked for a New Jersey garage before he got her. And now she's representing them now. Maybe I guess she's hot, so that's what it matters to him. I don't know. It's pretty stupid reason to hire a lawyer, but she is awful. And if she's representing him, the first thing you do in Georgia is you would show videotape of Stacey Abrams over and over again saying how she was robbed in Georgia, and then say, "Your Honor, arrest my case. She's not being prosecuted. Why am I? Selective prosecution." But I know she won't do that because she never does. And Trump had a chance to give a giant middle finger, finally do something to the establishment when New York, the first prosecutor who said he was going to get him, the young black guy up there, when they first prosecuted him in New York, Trump's a citizen of Florida, a resident of Florida. He didn't have to go there. And DeSantis, to his credit, came out and gave him protection and said, you know what? This is stupid. I'm not going to recognize any extradition order. He put the onus on himself.
Has to. No choice in the Constitution. One state has to.
Well, he said he would. Well, no, back when Jim Garrison was trying to prosecute, they had several governors, including Reagan in California, John Connally.
I know, who wouldn't cooperate, but that's unconstitutional.
Yeah, so here's DeSantis not cooperating. So he puts the onus on himself. He offers to do it. And again, Trumpenstein, instead of taking advantage of it and giving that would have been the first shot. That would have been a Lexington and Concord moment. Because he would finally show, okay, I'm not cooperating. This is nonsense. I'm not going to, because DeSantis said, I don't recognize it as legitimate. Trump wouldn't do it. Instead, he starts calling DeSantis de-sanctimonious and makes an enemy of him. And his stupid lawyer, the younger woman I'm talking about, says, no, because Tucker Carlson raised that with her and said, why doesn't he just stay in Florida? And because he was still in the air. And she said, no, I advised him, I want him to go right into that New York courtroom and look those people in the eye. It's like, what kind of idiotic legal advice is that? To go into New York.
I think he lost that New York case today.
Of course. He lost as soon as he walked in. But what kind of lawyer does that when here you have the governor giving you protection, however it ends up, you make a stand and you say, no, I'm not going to, this is a bogus. Do you think if Bill Clinton was summoned to New York over some nonsense, or Obama, they wouldn't recognize it? Just like Hunter Biden is thumbing his nose now I had Peter Navarro on my show. Peter Navarro was prosecuted and convicted of contempt of Congress for not obeying a subpoena. Hunter Biden's the exact same thing happening. He holds a press conference. The press fawns all over it. Nothing will happen to him. So it's selective prosecution. I'm sorry. I'm taking your time.
Oh, no. It's okay. I want to tell you about that T-shirt again. It's a very good, really heavy-duty T-shirt. I think it costs $28. And the person who's selling it is on the YouTube channel called Brush Junkie, because she sells makeup brushes. That's what she was doing before. Hawaii happened. She's a Hawaiian Japanese girl, and she changed her story, but she didn't change the name. So you have to look for Brush Junkie. She's selling the T-shirts, and she's been right up there from the very beginning. And another girl also called Michelle Melendez, and her handle is called Stand Together Hawaii. And both of them have really saved the day by coming on frequently with a new program with some new interviewee. Maybe someday they'll interview me. And they're both wonderful girls. So I'm not trying to push her product to have her make money. I'm pushing this product because it's a really good shirt. And when I wore it, I went down to the RFK talk on autism. I've been following him for many years on autism. He's just fine. And his little meeting was in Savannah, Georgia, big meeting. And I wore that shirt, and it really got people talking. So if you want to have anybody talk about Hawaii, you need to wear the shirt, although now that it's winter, if you live north of more than Richmond, and you'd be too cold to wear it. But I'm just telling you. And the other girl named Michelle, Michelle Melendez, she'll do anything. She loves Hawaii, and she understands forgiveness. She's open to everything. Of course, she understands what happened on the day of the fire. There's no nonsense there. But she isn't just like a protester. She wants to hear new ideas what to do. And by the way, I do too. So now here's my new idea, the one that got me going. I want to start a grand jury. Now, you may recall that Rainer Fulmich on the subject of, and I was never sure that I trusted him. I don't really know for sure, but maybe he's okay. He decided that since the ICC won't take anyone, you know what I mean? It's all run by the US. The ICC is a hopeless situation. But this man wanted to, Rainer Fulmich, bring forth the anti-Pfizer, and he wanted to prosecute. And to get that started, he did I think he had a grand jury going, maybe it wasn't him, among the Maori people in New Zealand, who are more political than the settlers. Maori have never lost touch with the fact that it was their land. And I think there was something like a grand jury going on down there against the Pfizer and all that. But Rainer was doing an excellent one with an assistant or testifier named Astrid Schuckelberger, or some complicated name, who had been previously in the WHO in the UN, and she was aware in advance of how this thing was to unroll into becoming really the world government through health. All right, you follow any of that in the past?
Not really. Go ahead, keep on.
Okay, so Rainer boy is now out of the picture against his will because he was arrested when he went into, I think, Mexico. Not sure. I think Mexico. He walked into his German embassy to renew his passport, and there was a cop waiting for him saying there was an outstanding arrest warrant, of course, for something like a freedom of speech incursion by him. So right now there's not a grand jury going on that. So I would think that a grand jury is the appropriate manner. Now I want to really hit you with a shock about 9/11. I hope you will be shocked. It has to do with grand juries, according to the Constitution, Fifth Amendment, they exist without supervision by government. They are the people. So in colonial Massachusetts, for instance, you and your friends, I don't know how it would start, but there would be 24 of you, and you would accept that job for 2 years. And during those 2 years, other people could come to you and say, that guy's a thief, and then you try to write up maybe a prosecution against him. Or you could even come in and say, there are potholes in the road and my horse is going to break his leg. You could point out problems of society. So, and I'm sure they did it with gusto. But then fairly recently, could even be as recently as 1960, in the federal area, which really shouldn't have a big judiciary anyway, but it does. And they made in a little extra rule that the prosecutor, so that would be someone in DOJ, is supervising the grand jury. And indeed, a friend of mine was in a case, but that was a state case in Massachusetts, where he said the person was obviously had committed a murder, but the prosecutor sitting in the room would only let them say manslaughter. Well, maybe the prosecutor was going by, as usual, as they do, which will win more easily. Well, we can win more easily with manslaughter, but the grand jury didn't have the final right to say, no, that's not what we want, but they should, okay? I mean, we should be able to trust our neighbors to do that.
Sure.
And if this, the shock I'm going to give you about 9/11, this occurred approximately January of this past year, so 1 year ago, I think. There was a group called Lawyers for 9/11 Inquiry. Does that ring a bell? It's not the AE people that talk about the towers. It's
No, I haven't heard. I've heard of them. Yes, I've heard of them. Yeah.
okay. So they worked their way up. It takes years to get a case going, and all cases related to 9/11, even if they occurred somewhere far away, must be brought. I don't approve of this rule, but must be brought to the one judge, Alvin Helliston. He retired recently, but to his court, which was SDNY, Southern District of New York. And the complaint was that the University of Alaska at Fairbanks, I think, conducted a study and disputed that it couldn't have been thermite or wood. It couldn't have been the fuel heating from the planes that caused the towers to collapse. And they had good statistics to show. I don't think they said, and it was so-and-so. I think they just said it wasn't what the government claims.
Right.
So they wanted to put this into the grand jury, and it might as well be New York, because that's where the World Trade Center was. And they wanted to just hand their information in to the existing grand jury. I guess at any moment, if you want to go right now into the Oklahoma grand jury, it's there, it's sitting. You know, they're doing other things, but they are there. You can go to them. So this group of lawyers called Lawyers for 9/11 Inquiry, I think, and they said, here's our stuff from Fairbanks. We want the grand jury to see it. And the prosecutor says, nope. So they had to fight that in court, and they couldn't win. And finally, this past January, it got as far as the Supreme Court, but at that point, the Supremes can say, we will or we will not hear the case, right? It's called flying certiorari or something. And they didn't win. Now, this is outrageous. The thing at stake was not whether the towers fell or didn't fall. It was whether the man can hand information in to the grand jury. So since the SCOTUS has been so egregious as to turn away that clear right of the citizens, I shouldn't go around saying I have faith in a grand jury, but I tend to have faith. I get to think the law can win.
Bless you for having any faith in this system. I mean, it's pretty. It will be interesting to see what Trump's Supreme Court does if they follow suit on everything except Roe versus Wade. Now, I've got my own theory about why they ruled that way for that, but on everything else, they have just, especially anything related to the election of 2020, they've gone against him or recused themselves or whatever. So I will be shocked if they support him in much of anything here. In my opinion, it'll be just more of the Trumpenstein project, how the judges he picked, pay the sway. I mean, I don't have any confidence, because at this point, if you look at things, the Supreme Court might be saying, well, maybe they're a best hope. Maybe they're not completely crazy. But so far, other than Roe versus Wade, and I have my own theory about that, I think they ruled the way they did because they know there's going to be a lot fewer pregnancies with the transgender movement. I mean, if girls are turning into boys and boys are turning into girls, they don't have to worry about pregnancies or abortions. I think that's why they ruled that way. And also, I think to give the Democrats an issue for the election, is now so many of them were fired up about that. That's my opinion. What do you think of that?
On this thing of the the state of Maine came in now, and they write him off the ballot, okay, based on 14th Amendment. That has got to be a setup. And of course, the Supremes control all the lower federal judges. So whoever that federal judge is, Mary Smith, she must have been told to do it, to agree with the ridiculous thing of him being kept off. And I'll tell you in 3 words or less why it's ridiculous. One, it says that any official 14th Amendment says, and it was intended just for that Civil War situation. If you're a rebel, we won't let you back in if you had held an office as an official. I don't think elected persons like presidents are called officials. So that's a small matter. And another matter is that later there were amnesties granted across the board by the President Johnson, who came in right after Lincoln died. And it sort of negates that. But more than that, at the very end of the 14th Amendment, it says, unless, we'll keep you off the ballot, unless 3/4 or 2/3 of Congress tells us to do otherwise. Well, there'll never be a chance, right? If you didn't get on the ballot, Congress cannot use its little discretion for that. So it's ridiculous. Pardon me.
Sure.
Would you please read out that letter on the board? Todd, can you just speak?
It says the Supreme Court has agreed to decide whether former President Donald Trump can be prevented from standing for president because of his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. So we'll see what they do, because you have Maine and obviously you had Colorado, and you're going to have other states too. So, and the idea is ridiculous that they think they can do this, but I'm amazed that if you would place any credence in the courts now, it's absolutely ridiculous what they've done to the January 6th prisoners, and people are just getting these draconian sentences left and right, and there's no precedence or anything for it. They're just looking at the politics of someone and just punishing them because of their politics, and and people don't care. I try to point that out to people, and I said, look, I would feel the same way if this was Black Lives Matter or anybody. You have to be treated to the law. Right now, we don't have a law. We don't have a nation of laws anymore. It's a nation of men or women or whatever you want to call it. It's personalities.
Yep. I think we'll get the law back. I think the law is a natural thing. I mean, it's in nature. It's in nature.
Well, you can't have a society without it. But right now, it just seems like it's whatever. Like I said, just something like recently when you have like Peter Navarro, who I've had on my show before, he was convicted of the same crime, contempt of Congress for not, responding to a subpoena, that Hunter Biden is just snubbing his nose at and laughing at them. So you can't, it doesn't get any more glaring than that. You can't prosecute one person and not another person because of their politics. And that's exactly what they're doing.
Boy, I see there's only 7 minutes left. I want to say something else that I forgot to, but I wrote it on a note to myself in regard to Hawaii. I seem to have a little cough. Sorry.
Please, yeah.
Now, in Australia, I'm kind of part Australian, I say we. I mean, we Australians.
Sure.
We Australians had to put up with having our bees killed off deliberately by the government it must have been 6 months ago. And it was really traumatic. And of course, they make up some reason like, oh, there's a bacteria or something, you got to kill the bees. Come on, you kill the bees, you're killing the crops.
Right.
Now, right now in Hawaii, I mentioned the 2 ladies named, it's Tracy Derwin who does the Brush Junkie, and it's Marshall Melendez who does the Stand Together Hawaii. And they are both crying about the release, so the threatened release, but Melendez says it probably already started, of injected mosquitoes. Don't ask me how you can inject a mosquito.
Yeah, that would be
it. What is the point of doing this? It's that there's
nothing
a
good
certain native bird which gets malaria and that bird might go extinct. And to fight that off, we would something like get these mosquitoes to bite the other creature, don't forget who it is, that is harming the birds. Now, I'd just like to say that, in my opinion, that is all being done to traumatize the people further. They've been traumatized by the Lahaina fire. Then they've been traumatized even by this problem of how to sort out the waste material and are we going to put it near the water and wreck the water. And there's also this thing of the mosquitoes, which could make life miserable for everyone, of course, if it goes wrong, and probably would.
Sure.
It probably intended to go wrong. And I think that terrorizing people and terrorizing us too, all of us, at all times is a major goal. And that although I know a lot of methods of mind control that are quite fussy, that's a generalized one that you can do just by putting headlines in every day about how difficult everything is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
The money will disappear and your food shortages are coming any day, and I believe they are. And now for these people in Hawaii who are sort of, it's the opposite of being landlocked, they're ocean locked. And they are being traumatized. So it's all of a piece. That's my comment.
Yeah, well, I want you to talk about whatever you want to talk about in the time we have left, because I've taken too much of your time. To talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Okay, I want to say again, everybody needs this book as fast. I mean, if you're willing to take some serious reading, this is serious. Another one? Well, you might as well check out my Sandy Hook book just to see how I handled it. Now, do you remember, Don? I was on your show, but it was radio only. Well, it had a video of cling peaches. I'm sorry. You'll have to talk. I can't talk.
Sure, no, I appreciate everybody. And please, Stephanie Green is interested in your book, so give out your email at the end so she can email you if you could get her books to you. And thank you, Deborah Wheeler. She says, thank you, Mary, for all you do. Your hair looks pretty today, too. So you got getting lots of compliments there.
Okay. Maxwell Mary, LLB, as in baby, Gmail. Sorry.
It's okay. So you got this says
Dawn,
Maxwell Mary LLB at Gmail.
Yes, I'm going to sign off. Is that okay?
Sure,
Bye.
sure, Mary. Okay, Mary. Thank you very much, Mary. Okay, we still have a few minutes left. So, okay. Mary has a coughing thing or something going on. So, let's look. I have a lot of action in the chat room over there. Rockfin, I saw over there wasn't a whole lot of questions, but more of you there. But I can see you sometimes now. It depends on whether it's going to let me see it or not. And want to see more in the Free World FM chat as well when people start doing. Shout out to lots of people over in the Rockfin chat. Obviously, Rhonda Tate stood out. She's been around for a long time. Good to see her there. And this, boy, we have lots of people. White Wolf, Sam's Bodie's Tree, William Hale from Australia, Don Lambert, Stephanie Green, John Lawler, Foggy Trail, Deborah Wheeler, of course, Wesley Curry II. I don't know what the hell he left a couple messages and I'm not sure he's talking to Allah or something. I don't know what the hell is going on there, but maybe somebody else can understand what he was saying, but I didn't. But the rest of you, obviously, some. I love this kind of participation. I love you guys, with your questions and comments. It's very gratifying to know that people are out there and listening to this show every week. Please, if you can, Substack. If you're not subscribed to me on Substack, please do so. DonaldJeffries.substack.com. It's I Protest Like the Show. And I'm getting thank you. Right now, man says I'm the man. Thank you right now. Thank you right now, man. I appreciate that. That's the place I'm not shadow banned, so you can do what you can there. My new book, Pipe the Bimbo in Red, written with William Law. Pipe the Bimbo in Red Dean Andrews, Jim Garrison, and the conspiracy to kill JFK is out there now. It needs some love. Obviously, Masking the Truth. Anything you can do for that. They are doing everything they can to suppress that. And it's I hear from people all the time the things they're doing with it. I know what they're doing with it myself. So please try to support it. And so many of you have tried to get it in your libraries. A few succeeded, but we really, we need more of that to try to break down their algorithm. I appreciate it. And that's certainly Stephanie bringing it to her doctor's office. That was great. I appreciate that. Houston Hayes, good to see you. Said that the Janet Osabord was suicided last week. She was a narrator. No, I did not hear that. I'll have to ask Bart Sabrell about, Bart obviously is a friend. Wow, Janet Osabord was suicided. Yeah, it's scary stuff. We saw somebody, I guess of the Biden body count, some woman that was, I read about that died strangely. And we have a Russian model that we learned died that was connected to Epstein with the Epstein list coming out. Speaking of which, has anybody seen that Epstein list yet? They keep talking about it, and I've seen, kind of hints, but I still don't really know. Is Jimmy Kimmel on it? My boy Aaron Rodgers, who I have more and more respect for, he may be the first conspiracy theorist to be a professional athlete. He's really getting bold out there, and he just simply made a joke about Jimmy Kimmel. They want to prosecute the guy. It's incredible. Sans Bodhi, she said, ask Sherry Curry follows you the runways to come on. She has something coming out, so she's cool, dears. Sherry Curry follows me from the Runaways? I didn't know that. That's cool to know that. Do I understand you correctly, Sam, that she follows me already? Very cool. I don't know that much about the Runaways. I know Joan Jett, who I listened to her solo music, but that's very cool. If somebody, you never know who's gonna. I have people like Patty Darbinville. Oh, she follows you, Sam. Well, she follows you, Sam, of course. But yeah, that's great. Tony says we can post her email so he's gonna Tony's gonna post Mary's email on the Free World Instagram. He said so. Check it out there. But Geesebusters, yeah, good to see you here too, Geesebusters. And I think you gave me a compliment earlier too. Okay, so when you got me excited, I thought a member of the Runaways was following me. Who knows? Weird stuff happens. Like a while back, I saw on Twitter that this guy Gabor Zupo, I think that's how you pronounce his name, who I recognized his name because when my kids were little, they loved the Rugrats, and I watched it with them, and the Nickelodeon series, and I knew Gabor Zupo was the creator of that or co-creator of it. So, and I looked on his Twitter, and suddenly it says Gabor Zupo is following you, and I see on there that this is a guy he's talking about being co-creator of Rugrats. So I messaged him, and I said, "Hey, wow, really honored that you would follow me." And I said, "Well, have you read my work?" And I figured, well, how else would he know about me? And he wrote back, "No, I haven't, but why was he following me then?" So I have no idea how that works sometimes. Maybe they accidentally hit the wrong person or something to be. Harlan Stonewall, good to see you here. He says Bill Clinton is supposed to be on the look list. Even Fox News is reporting it. Yeah, well, he's supposed to be John Doe 37 or whatever the hell it is. So I don't know, but it'd be interesting to see how they swing, because I see on the competing forces, the people that hate Trump and love him, the people that hate Trump are he's they're constantly focusing on him on there, and so I don't know. Invite her over; she will follow you. Sam Bodie said, "Okay." Stephanie Green says her first concert was Johnny Cash at 9 years old. My first concert was America and Chad Stewart of Chad and Jeremy, who was great. He was a great solo artist. That was the first one I went to, and then another early concert I saw was George Harrison and the Beatles for $8. By the way, it cost me $8. So that's times have changed. But anyhow, so that's it's good to see so many people in here. So I hope you guys enjoyed Mary Maxwell. Mary Maxwell, a wonderful person. I love her. She's she's so easy to have a crush on. She's so sweet, and maybe, who knows? Maybe she'll upset everybody. And wouldn't that be the biggest story of all time? Mary Maxwell wins the New Hampshire primary, and we'll have her victory celebration on air here. But no, seriously, she's done great work on so many things. Sandy Hook, Boston bombing, now Hawaii. So very interesting stuff. So I guess it's time to Don Lambert says the first concert was 10-wheel drive. I don't think I've heard of them. And Stephanie Green says saw Steve Martin too. He was great when he first started. I didn't see him, but I understand he was really good first. But at any rate, so thanks everybody for listening, and I'll just close this down here. Listen to us tomorrow on America Unplugged, as you always do, and please, thanks so much for your support, and we'll see you next week on iProtes.